New, old, forgotten. Get the scope on products with Hot or Not with Keith Peffer. Keith Peffer Puffer. Santa's little drunk.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Hot or Not, a show about hot new products and a little bit of how-tos and all kinds of different stuff. We got a lot of plans for the professional triers. I was just talking to our guest just a minute ago, and, I'm just really stoked about what we're going to be bringing in the 2020 section, 2020 season. But hey, the 2019 build period, I'm really stoked about it. I've been doing a lot of building myself. Today is going to be a really interesting episode, I think. I think everyone's going to really like this. I think this is going to be a good one for the visual guys and a really good one for you listeners, because I've been getting messages. You all have been kind of saying, hey, you guys are kind of forgetting about us in the audio podcast side. And I hear you. So I think this episode is for you. So today I got an amazing guest. I'm really stoked about this guest because, he's been kind of, I think, a key pivotal person in the community. I was just telling him just a minute ago that I kind of came into the holiday lighting almost watching his videos early on in the 2016 days. And so I'm, without further ado, John Spiker. John, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm really stoked about this year. A lot of building. It's that build period.
It's the build. Good. Like you said, it's the build, setup, the testing, the frustration, and then the satisfaction when you see it all work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. That period of the pauses when you're first turning on everything, you're just like, oh God, I tested it in the garage. Will it actually work when it's on the house? And
yeah, just last night, my son and I were going out doing the bars test. I think I posted a video on it, and everything wasn't working. And we just sat there, died laughing, just because of how hysterical it was, watching everything do exactly what I didn't expect it to do.
Yeah, never works out the first time.
But that's the fun of it.
Exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't love this hobby as much if it was just plug and play. I think a lot of people feel the same way too.
I would agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. But, also this is the time of period where, we make mistakes, right? We get in habits, we get kind of lazy, right? And you had a recent spill, right? When you were kind of doing some ladder work.
Yeah. Actually, just yesterday, last Sunday, I was up on my roof working on stuff, and I looked at my watch, and time was of the essence because my wife had planned lunch with friends. And I was walking down my ladder, thinking about it. What can I get done before we have to leave? Paying no attention to the aspect that 3 hands on the ladder or 3 points on your ladder at all times. And I missed one of the steps and came straight back. Luckily, I wasn't hurt. Embarrassed, definitely embarrassed. My video, as you can see, captured all of it.
As I instant replay it.
Instant replay it. It was my wife. I walked in the house and she goes, "Your face is just white as a ghost." And I told her, I go, "Yeah, it was a wake up call to definitely make sure you're paying attention, not just with ladder safety, but electrical work. We're plugging a lot of things in. Make sure that you're paying attention to what you're plugging in. You're plugging in the right things. We are dealing with electricity. So it's just a reminder that in the rush, in the hurry, it's important to really take a step back and go, deep breath. It'll all get done."
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to forget those little basic electronic mistakes that you can make, And so, yes, exactly like John's saying, just take a deep breath, everyone. It'll all work out. Another thing to take note is that if something has to maybe, you have to dial something back, maybe a prop that you really need to get out, if it's killing you to get it out, don't just slow down, put it out in the middle of December. I know how painful that could be for some people, but, it's not worth hurting yourself for a prop, right?
Yeah, I'll have a quick story for you. I
Please.
was up working on, I was putting up what I call my super flakes, are the Matt Johnson flakes. And I knew I needed to add power injection to the end of it. And I have 2 sets of power injection wires. I have the ones that are for my inside tree and then ones that are for everything else outside the house. And the positive and negative on them are opposite. Lo and behold, I grabbed an inside tree one, hooked it up, plugged it in, 4 fuses all at once. Pop, pop, pop.
Ouch.
But that's why you fuse. Is
Yes.
it it didn't hurt anything. It was just the fuses blew, and I had to take a look as to why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a year last year actually where every time I would plug it in, the fuse would go off. And I don't, this is a perfect example of mistakes you can make that even somebody that's been doing it a little while that you can make. And that I went back and I got a new fuse and I did it again and it blew again. I did it maybe 2 more times. So I went through 4 fuses until I said in my head, wait, hang on. There's probably something down the line that's actually making this thing go off, right? And I don't know why it took me 4 freaking fuses to get to that point of thought. But again, I'm like, hey, I wired this in my house. I know it worked in there. Why is it doing this? And so, lo and behold, I went down the line and I saw that, hey, there was a little bit of the butt connector that fell out of it. And so that disconnection, that arcing, that was what was causing the fuses to go off. So, pause. If I just kind of, didn't take my ignorance, kind of like I knew what I was doing, just kind of pause for a minute, I would have figured that out sooner.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
and we all do it. I
Yeah.
mean, for somebody getting started going, I don't know what's happening. I feel embarrassed. Don't feel. We all do it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's one of those, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no stupid question, those kind of things.
Most definitely.
Yeah. I love this hobby. We just, uh, and you're such a great person for this because you're just like, you're out there, taking in the questions and then putting it out there. I feel like some days I'm like thinking about something and then an hour or two later, John's actually doing it and then applying it, or at least like giving us the knowledge, like your power supply video that you did recently, of your kind of testing the different power supplies and giving us that data, that raw data, so we can all kind of make smart choices later on. That's just great.
Yeah, and that that was a lot of fun. It was more for me to really, is there really a difference? Because everybody talks about it, everybody says different things. I really wanted to see scientifically on the ground, was there really a difference? And there was, but there really wasn't. So it gave at least a unbiased aspect of what the different things can happen and how the different power supplies really react.
Mm-hmm. Can you give like just a rundown of like what that experiment was for, like the kind of like why did you do it, and then what was kind of the rundown results, really quick?
So just at a very, very high level, a lot of my display is on my roof. 90% of my display is on my roof. And because of that, it increases the risk of fire to my family. So I wanted to really understand at a safety level what was the difference between power supplies, what could potentially happen, and how could I mitigate it. And by putting it through the paces, I could see real world in my garage. If I catch something on fire in here, that's okay. We have fire extinguishers everywhere. It's not really a big deal. But catching something on fire on my roof and potentially putting my family at danger is not an option for me. And that was really the driver behind it.
Yeah, no, it was great. And highly suggest people look into it. I mean, if you just search John Spiker almost in every holiday lighting group right now, you're going to see, because you basically post a lot of your stuff all across the group because you kind of know that everyone kind of sees things in different places, right? And so you're hitting every little group. So you can find those details there.
You can. I'm actually kind of particular though, where I post certain things. I'll post certain things that are safety across the groups. Other things I'll only post in the think tank
Mhm.
because it's not relevant to something else. And the think tank allows for us to collaborate on all multiple different levels.
You're 100% right. I feel like, when we went to 2017, there was that big, like, abruption of everyone being like, hey, where do we put all of this, like, how to's? I'm building things or kind of, my experience. It has nothing to do with X lights, but it has everything to do with lighting. Where do we put it? And that was like the year that it kind of like was like, oh my gosh, guys, hey, this is the official group. And that's kind of like later when when the think tank came out. And, that's just, you know, thank God it came out because it was kind of like when that came out, it was like, oh yeah, the think tank. That's where we should just put all of our ideas, that we're kind of building or brainstorming as a community.
Yeah, most definitely. And it has been a great catalyst for that, for allowing people, whether you're Lore or X Lights or Vixen, it doesn't matter. It's a great community.
Hmm. Yeah, the same way that you're going to hold a prop or a way that you're going to, secure a prop to your house, it doesn't matter what software you're using. We can use that knowledge across all of it.
Yeah, most definitely.
So we kind of touched on safety and stuff like that. Build period. We got to get everyone be safe out there. And so I kind of want to get personal into you. So how many years have you had an animated display,
This is
John?
my fifth year.
Okay.
My first year was actually with a dumb controller, and it was just my windows and the front of my house, not even my whole house outline, just the top front row and the windows. And it was an amazing experience to see the ability to control lights and control the display. It kind of solidified me moving forward. And actually, what led to that was that year, if you some of you may remember, Matt Johnson came out with his display, and my son saw a video of it and said, "Dad, you can never do that." And I said, don't ever tell your dad he can't do something, because that's really the opposite of me. And that was the catalyst that propelled my display to where it is today.
Now, was that Cody?
It was Cody.
Is your son? Now, Cody's really involved now. I mean, was he involved at that time? But I mean, I met him. He's involved kid. So,
He's involved, but at an arm's length. I
okay.
mean, he'll help dad with a lot of things that he's interested in. Most of it's still me, but a lot of the build aspect, anything that needs welding, he does all the welding for me. That's his thing. And then helping in general is definitely out there. My other son Zachary helps a little bit, and my daughter just provides critique on what's wrong.
You definitely need that. I mean, everyone needs that. Let's see. It came out wrong.
No, it's true though.
Yeah. No, but that's awesome. I mean, like I said, I met Cody. He's a great guy, and it's great to have like those kind of people, family members on your corner helping you out, and having somebody that very specific job in it. That's kind of a cool thing for him too. Is like when you're getting a plan out and it's like going to be dedicated to welding. I bet that's kind of an exciting thing for him too.
It is, and he has a lot of fun with it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. So, where are you? Where are you located? We know Southern California, but like, do you want to go any more into that, or is that kind of
So I'm in Southern California, basically the Shadow Hills area, which is maybe 8-10 miles north of Burbank.
okay? And I made a little note here because you live by horses, right?
Oh,
So,
I actually have 4 horses, 3 that live at home, and 1 that's a show horse that lives at the ranch.
show horse. Okay, that's kind of interesting. What kind of show horsing is that? Kind of, I don't know anything about that.
He's a dressage show horse. My daughter showed for many, many years, and now that she's a little older, she doesn't show anymore. So he's leased out, and younger people are using him as a show horse, which is great for me because he's off my feed bill and he's off my training bill, and he's getting to do his job.
That's pretty cool. I had an uncle that had horses up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. His horse was Howard. I love the horses are awesome.
They're a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
mean, as long as they're good horses. Bad horses, not so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. They had another horse at one point that was definitely a bucker. It wasn't fun. So back to the display. uh, what what is your display like? Can you give kind of like a picture for people? Do you have any photos you'd like to share with the viewers? You know,
I have lots of photos. So kind of the overall, I can share my screen in a second, but
yeah, no worries.
my display is on my house. Just to kind of give a setup, I live on a gated piece of property, and the street is 6 feet higher than my front door. So it's a big slope. So yes, pretty much a big slope down, and I can show a picture maybe. Uh, Give me well, actually, we'll keep talking and I'll
Yeah.
find something. But yeah, it's so if I put anything in my yard, for example, nobody could see it unless I raise it up 5, 6 feet. So that's why everything is on my roof, because that is eye level to the audience themselves.
Hmm.
And I think I have a picture.
And you also have that fence, right? You said you have a fence, and so that fence is also kind of a foreground to your display in the background, right?
Correct. So here, let me share screen one. So here's a picture from last year. And if you'll notice that you can see the mega tree. My mega tree is 18 feet tall, but from the street, you only see about 10 feet of it.
Yeah.
And everything else below is hidden. And that's why everything is on my roof. And I spend so much time and effort making sure that that gives the audience the best view possible.
Hmm. I love the arches on the roof. That's such an original idea.
It's fun. I like it. And this last year, when I came up with this idea, it was figuring out how to put the Matt Johnson snowflakes up,
Hmm.
essentially 10 feet in the air and have them underneath the arches, which is a challenge because you don't want to, obviously, you can't drill into your roof. You can't put any holes in your roof, but you've got to secure it for 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds. So I built an entire structure behind it that holds it all up. And this year I'm expanding upon it and adding mini trees along the sides here. I've got super flakes over here. I actually have current pictures from this year.
Okay.
This was from last year. So I believe this is a recent picture. So here's this year. The other thing I
Oh my
noticed
gosh.
last year was the snowflakes. I had them laying flat on my roof, and I think this picture gives a better depiction of the height perspective of. You can see here my gate is just in line with the top of my roof.
Hmm. Wow.
And so last year, everything, actually since day one, all my snowflakes were laying flat. This year, I'm standing all of them up and then standing everything else up.
And with your snowflakes, because I do want to go into depth and to basically kind of how you have everything up. Like for the listeners, he's got he has to has he has to have everything on the roof basically, so it's visual. So imagine putting all the props you normally would put out on your lawn. You got to have them on the roof. The struggle, the that's amazing. And so the way you did the snowflakes this year, so they're not lying down. How did you do that? That's something did you have to make a mounting system for them, or are they just magically floating?
They're magically floating. No, in all honesty, a couple of things I'll note about it. So I have different methodologies that I use to mount different things on my roof. For example, my roof outline, I use EMT. It's actually half-inch EMT that I use all the way around, just because it's so rigid, and I can leave it up all year long because it blends in. And then I use pixel strips to essentially to attach the pixels all the way around every year, and then take them all down. For the snowflakes themselves, they're essentially just a PVC stand that is interconnected in the way that in the back of it there's a support brace, in the front of it there's support braces that equal the middle of the snowflake, so that I can easily attach zip ties to put it up and then take it all back down, and then fold the PVC stands to store easily so that it's not an issue to store everything. For other elements, I use 3/4 inch EMT just because I need the rigidity to be able to hold it. And then to hold it all into place, I don't use sandbags, but we can call them sandbags. I use pea gravel from Lowe's, which is cheap, and then put them in 1 gallon bags for the snowflakes and with duct tape on it. And then the heavier, bigger items, I use I think it's like 2.5 cubic feet of peat gravel and put it on there.
Wow. Like the thought process of everything getting done, the amount of testing you have to do before bringing it up to begin with. Like you don't want to be building that up there, right? So that's a lot of these things, like the way that the snowflakes are kind of stacked up there. That whole frame is built down in the garage, right? And then you kind of bring that up there.
Yeah, I build everything on the ground and then take it up on the roof. Some of the stuff stays up all year round, like the ridge outlines, the tower structures, the base of it. Not actually the towers themselves, but the base structure stays on my roof all year round, just because it's easier. But again, it's not permanently affixed to my roof, so I don't have to worry about it.
I remember last year around this time, you showed off kind of how you did the 3/4 inch EMT. I think you hammered the ends and then kind of create like the connection that way, and maybe used like a bolt to go through it. I actually ended up copying that and did it for my matrix outline. I thought it was just a simple design. I got EMT, banged it on with the hammer, drilled right through it, and I got my connection. And I'm seeing more and more people kind of doing I think Billy, he kind of, he's been doing more of the buying the pre-made kind of teas and then, kind of using it that way. I haven't tried it yet. I mean, what have you tried anything? What's the newest things that you kind of are doing with your structures, this year?
So I don't have pictures for the mini trees yet. I will very soon, but here's a close up of actually the towers. And that the way I did it was at the bottom here, these are the A1 connectors that are usually used like on the side of a building or something for EMT. And they're connected to that. And then there's back braces that come down and then connect to the middle. And then it's all actually bolted together. Everything is heavily bolted together, including over here. You can see all the way through it. And they're all bolts that can come in and out, so I can take it all apart at the end of the year. But last night we had 65-mile-an-hour winds come through.
Yeah.
Nothing moved.
Yeah. I got to do some experimenting like that too. We got like 90-mile-per-hour winds. It was freaking crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane.
I honestly expected when I woke up this morning to have snowflakes blown everywhere. These 1-gallon bags of peat gravel worked just fine. Nothing fell, nothing moved. I was quite surprised. I honestly expected it to fall.
Now, do you get like trash bags or what kind of bag? Because those are like white bags for the listeners, and then you add pea gravel from Lowe's. But what's the bags themselves? Is that specialty or just a burlap? Or
so the big bags, the big white bags, are actually the ones I get from the fire department for sandbags.
Okay,
don't tell them.
No, whatever.
And I actually, the plastic bag I got from Lowe's, I just took the whole plastic bag and put it in there. Didn't take the gravel out of it. Just put it in there. As just in the event that the plastic ripped or something happened, I didn't want it like going everywhere on my yard, on my roof. So that's why it's secured in there. And then the 1-gallon ones are just Ziploc bags. They're Ziploc heavy duty freezer bags.
Okay. That's actually really smart. I was looking into the actual real, used for like holding up stage lights and stuff like that, and those sandbags. And it's like, yeah, it starts adding up.
It does. Actually, for my mega spinners, what I did was for those in particular, because they're a little different, I didn't want to, I needed something bigger and heavier, and I needed something reusable. So I purchased canopy bags. So canopy sandbags.
Yeah.
That they're Kevlar, and then they're plastic internally. Well, they're like a rubber coating internally. And each one can hold up to 20 pounds of sand, gravel, whatever. And they're reusable. So next year I can take the same ones and reuse them. And then in the off season, when I have canopies up, if I'm taking Cody to a go-kart race or whatever, I have them to use there also.
That's cool. Yeah, multi-purpose. That's awesome. So yeah, we kind of I love your display, by the way. Like, everyone has their like limits on like what they can do in their property. Like we all have something that's like, okay, yeah, I can't do something here because of these geography problems or there's a wall there, whatever. And like the way that you kind of jump those hurdles, and I would not think you made any compromises. It's looks great.
I appreciate that. It's fun, and at the end of the year when it's all set up and done, and I can sit out front and watch people enjoy it. It makes it all worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't do this just for ourselves, that's for sure.
Well, not at all.
So, what's your favorite prop that you have in your yard? I think I know it, but what is
All
it?
right, so I'm going to ask you to tell me what's my favorite prop.
I,
If you
I
think
thought it was the living light snowflakes. I don't know. I feel like that's your favorite. I'm probably way off now that I said it.
you are absolutely way off.
Oh, okay.
I will show you a picture of my favorite prop
Okay.
as I keep sharing my screen and unsharing. Here is my favorite prop.
Oh my goodness.
So
what is that? Is that a dinosaur?
no, so this is a picture from 2006 or 7 when I had just a static display. It was right after Cody was born, and I wanted to have an element in my display for him, and it was Snoopy. So essentially it's a
Okay.
Snoopy character that I bought at Home Depot or Lowe's or somewhere. I don't remember where I bought it. But at any rate, it was his element, and growing up as a kid, he always absolutely loved it. So that element to this day
Oh my
is in
gosh.
my display.
That's awesome.
And that's why he's front and center on the front gate, so that every night when I come home from work or the family comes home, we see that element.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was totally off. That's a better story anyway, too. That's great. And like, hang on. So talking about animals and displays, I feel like I saw a photo recently. You had also a horse outline.
So the other element to that point is, I'll just pull up this picture. So this, in my first year of doing pixels, my wife said you need to have a horse element in the display. So this particular prop has actually been in my display since I went into pixels, but it's always been down here, and the family could see it. We always knew it was there, but nobody else could ever see it or know that it was part of the display. And this year I was looking at, my setup and what I wanted to do. And I'm like, why not put the horse head front and center for my wife? And so lo and behold, it is this year, it will be front and center.
That's great. Yeah, front and center of the show. That's where it probably should be, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, what's the most exciting thing that you're kind of putting out this year? What are you excited about?
I'm really excited about the mini trees on my roof. I've spent a lot of time this year kind of going through what I wanted to do. When the season was over, I knew I wanted to have mini trees on my roof, but I wasn't really sure how I was going to do it, what it would look like. So I've gone through a number of iterations. So the first thing I did is I went and I purchased 8 of the large mini trees from Boscoyo and put it up on my roof. And it honestly didn't go so well. I didn't like the look at all, to be honest with you. And I will find a picture of it.
Are these the cone versions, the ABS versions, or still the Coroplast ones? They basically look the same.
They all look the same. It was the coral one.
Mm-hmm.
But when I put it up on my roof, and for those that are listening and not seeing me sharing, what happened was is when I put it up there, it didn't pop. It was just kind of like it was there, and it didn't really add any dynamicism to what I was trying to accomplish. So I went back and I'm like, okay, let's redesign this. Let's rethink about this. what do I want it to look like? I wanted it to look more like a mega tree, but a mini tree. So the first one is, if I'm showing a picture, you can't see it if you're just listening. It just wasn't enough density. It didn't feel like I could get effects to look the way I wanted to do. So I went back and I redesigned it and I created my own and then put it on my roof
Wow.
and had the dramatic look I was really looking for.
Hmm.
It looks like a mega tree, but it's a mini tree on the roof.
Hmm. Yeah, very dense. Like you can actually get images off that thing.
Yeah, and the initial plan was to have 8 on my roof. Then the plan went to 6 on my roof when I started actually doing the layout. Now, what's going to be reality is 4 on the
You got, yeah.
roof. Spatially speaking, it wasn't going to work.
No. But it's gonna come off just great. That's that'll be good.
And that's kind of the fun of setup season is you
Hmm.
have an idea, you have a plan, whether or not that plan can be implemented is really within the bounds of what you're working with. And the only way you know is when you actually start doing it.
Hmm. And also, we could, this is kind of segue into the other part, but budget, you know? So slid into that a little bit. But
Budget is obviously a determining factor,
uh-huh.
and that's kind of a hard thing for all of us because all of us have different, fiscal capabilities and fiscal ability. I will say, if you're starting out, and this is for those really that are starting out, start small. You see people that come out and they're like, I'm going to put 13,000 pixels my very first year. That's cool. That's great. And it's an ambitious goal, but it's really not needed. Um, I always say start with the staples. My very first year with Pixels, I did the staples. I did the roof outline, I did the windows, I had a few snowflakes, I did a matrix because I thought the matrix was going to be the coolest thing in the world. Honestly, it was a waste of money, but start with your staples and grow your display from there because when you see your display, you'll start to visualize what you actually like and don't like.
Yeah, exactly. And in that way too, starting off that way, you can really customize it to your show and make it themed to your own display. We don't all have to be cookie cutter, same kind of look, originalities, like John's roofs outlines, putting the arches up there, having the horse head, having just all these kind of things that's his show. That's originality at its best. And, he built that based off of the layout he's dealt with. Same with mine. I have a very shallow depth kind of house. So it's everything, I throw it as far back as I can and hope to God that it's dense enough and close enough that the viewers can actually make out images. So, and so yeah, it's start out with the staples. You're right. Do a lot of research. Starting out early, but that doesn't mean that if you're starting out now, you can't have a display. It just means you just start off with the smaller stuff, maybe a few snowflakes, house outlines, right?
Yeah, and that's the important thing is really start out with the staples. And do you mind if I show? I mean, people have
No.
seen this video, but I'll show a really short, quick video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just really quick and short.
Yeah, go for it.
Share. I hope this doesn't blow people's ears out. But when I say staples, this was my 2015 display. Nothing spectacular, but it made everyone smile.
Mm-hmm. And for the listeners, he's got the window outlines and then basically a one house outline going on his eaves.
And that's it.
That's it. But it looks great. It's very symmetrical too. So he's got three windows on both sides, and then he has that one strip that's just going across. And he has it kind of, it looks like it's sort of mapped in a way that it's like left side, right side.
It is. And actually, that was all dumb pixels. So I
Mm-hmm.
started with dumb pixels. I would not recommend anybody do that today. This was back in 2015. a little different, but straight pixels today, but something small, something that you can build upon.
Yeah. I remember my first like animated display was just like 4 snowflakes that I made myself. And then um and that was it. I didn't have any house line, nothing. Just 4 snowflakes hanging on this tree. And I had a very organically looking coming off the tree. And I love it. I still have not replicated that since. And it's something I'm still trying to work on. But I just now that you start getting into like how it looks on the computer and then trying to replicate that, I couldn't have snowflakes sort of moving around every time the wind would blow.
Hmm.
So that's my struggle. So every year I try to get back to that idea, because I got these really Canary Island pine trees in front of my house. They're they've got kind of that bonsai kind of look to them. I love to organically have the snowflakes coming off of it. So again, build your show, based off of your house. I look at the Stoffergens, how they kind of they've made the Who house. That's something completely original too. I would love to see more of that.
That's a beautiful setup, and their
Yeah.
layout is incredible, and it's theirs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, John, you are like super amazingly knowledgeable. I mean, the knowledge is endless with you. And I think you kind of made your, not the stance, I think you made your mark in the Christmas group with your power injection. You have a website, which I'm going to share right now. But, let's go over a little bit about power injection if I can. So PI, as I like to call it, power injection, it's scary, right, John? I mean, everyone tells me it's a super scary thing. I mean, right?
No,
Oh, okay. Tell me about it.
it's not. Power injection, essentially at its very basic level, is adding additional power to a string of lights at its point of loss. It's really what it comes down to. And it, people make it scary only because of the fact that they complicate it so much. And that's why I try to use the statement, it's nothing more than adding additional power where you have a degradation of power. And what I mean by that is with any wire, I'm not even going to talk about pixels, but with any wire, the further you go, the more loss you have. By putting power into a particular wire, you boost it back up. Just like, if you look at our transmission lines for regular house power, they have transformers every certain distance because they need to boost the power. There's nothing different with power injection.
Is there kind of like a run of a mill kind of rule with power injection? Like when should I like do it? Or do you have like I don't know, a calculator?
Well, that's a great segue. As a matter of fact, I do. Now, I will say that my calculator is based off all of the scientific numbers. And it's really intended more to give you an idea rather than a godsend, or I don't know if I can use the word God. How about more of a it must be this? It's really just more of a guidance than anything else.
I love this thing. I'm showing it all. I'm sorry for the listeners, but please go to spikerlights.com/calc power.aspc. I'll also put the link in the show in the description. But please do. This is an amazing tool that he's built here, and I'm kind of playing around for the people that are watching. So I just plugged in 200 pixels. I'm doing 12 volts, and I'm going to do something like, I don't know. Seems like the average is more like in this 0.6 range, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is. When I put it together, it was the 0.72 because that was
Mm-hmm.
the resistance level back then. Today, it's more like 0.6, 0.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd even go 0.55.
Okay. This is what's cool about it, guys. I mean, look at that. So many choices you can narrow it down. And you can kind of experiment, So I'm at 100% right here. And this is telling me right here that like if when I'm going into the first, right, going into the first pixel here, that I'm at a, good level. I'm at 11, a little bit more because I'm coming out at 12 volts. I'm at 11. And then about at the 120 mark, yeah, 120 mark, that's when it boom, it just starts dropping. So that kind of gives you the tools to tell you when you could kind of power inject. And then over here on the right, this is kind of where you're gonna, inject. So I can tell myself, okay, I'm having that drop at 120. What would happen if I actually inject or add power into that 119 part right there? Boom. I just leveled everything. Now, John, I kind of want to talk about like kind of some no's and nots of power injecting, maybe. Like, I know that like people kind of they say that what's the best way to power inject? You would say, is it in the middle? Is it at the end? Is it using a tool like this to kind of figure out what the best point is and just throw down the power, the negative and the V plus? Or
So it's kind of subjective. I will say that. The one thing I do want to say is if you're going to run power injection, you're going to do it. You have to go back to the original power supply to begin with. Is you need to make sure that the wires you're running into a distro board or anything else are going to match the load that you're using. And that's the most important thing because no matter how much you want to power inject, it may actually not do anything for you if you're not wiring the power supply to the injection board, et cetera, appropriately. And that's an important key to think about. Because if hypothetically, I'll just give an example. If you're going from a power supply to a power injection board and you're using 16 gauge wire, that 16 gauge wire is not intended to handle a massive load. You want to use at least 12 gauge wire. You want to make sure that your base is set. And then everything from there can be whatever it is. Because that ground wire coming back is going to carry, no matter how much you power inject, going to carry the entire load. So make sure that you actually run the appropriate wires there. That's the first thing. And then from power injection, it's then you're balancing the load of all of the wires all the way around. So if you're running 16 gauge wire out or 18 gauge wire out, it's not necessarily as critical because the initiation point is actually carrying all of that load. I know that sounds a little confusing, but the most important thing is from the power supply to the initiation point where you're splitting the wires.
mm-hmm. So this is kind of a good representation, right? If you were to use this is kind of like if you're power injecting with two power supplies. Please check out John's website. This is just such a great resource with all kinds of interesting knowledge. This is a perfect little example, right? Right here, where you inject at the end.
Yeah, it's inject where it's most comfortable. There's a lot of times I inject power at probably not the most optimal place, but it's the easiest place.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing it in between props, I can have a power injection tee. I actually can't make my own. I don't use anyone's that I don't buy any of them because I never trust their internal wiring. But I make my own just so I know for a fact what's going to what. But it doesn't always have to be optimal. It's just a balanced aspect to the best capabilities you have.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that about the teas, John, because I I bought some teas from Ray Wu and a few other people in the past, and you have to do the tests, the
Continuity test.
continuity test, because I've gotten so many times where it says it, oh, that's the plus and negative, and then I plug it in and then I've got a blown fuse and I'm like, what the hell? Or even worse, a pixel dead. And it's like, oh, what the heck? Oh yeah. Yeah, you can't trust those things. Can't trust.
Yeah, I don't use any of them from any vendor. And that's a personal preference. I just want to know what wire is going to what without questioning it.
Yep, exactly.
And that's a good point to continuity test everything.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, you can order 100 pigtails from a vendor. You start continuity testing them. I can assure you at least 1% of them is going to be wired wrong. And if you put it in your display, you're going to be shaking your head and scratching your head and getting frustrated as to not understanding why.
Mm-hmm. Or even sometimes the pin will be removed inside of them,
Yes.
and like you wouldn't know that unless you did that test. Or I mean, you would be rattling your head for hours, maybe being like, "What the hell?" You may even have a show light up. You're getting weird flicker. It could be those
I
simple things.
I had that happen my second year
Hmm.
before I took the time to start doing that. Is I hooked everything up and it was for my display. It's gate number 3, and I'm like, why are all of these lights flickering? I don't understand it, and I was banging my head for like 2 hours, and I finally said, I'm just going to pull all the wires. I'm going to replace all the wiring, and then it all worked. And then after the season, I pulled it all back and I started doing continuity tests. And I realized that I had a positive in data crossed. And that's when I made the decision to test everything.
Yeah, I had something very similar. It's just, yeah, got to do it. Those little voltmeters are nothing as far as
Harbor
cost.
Freight, they're free.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I always forget about those. Harbor Freight. Oh my gosh, what a great place.
You're going to go shopping at Harbor Freight and buy something for 99 cents. That's great. You got a coupon for a free voltmeter that even if you destroy it, who cares? You'll get another one next week.
Exactly. Yeah. And everyone's got one pretty close to them, really, at this point. Oh man. So yeah, let's talk about smart receivers now. These are kind of the new receivers. When they're kind of first got word of them around like March time, it was kind of like, hey, David's going to be working on this receiver that you can have a test mode, and then all of a sudden, test mode became, oh god, what was the next big thing that he added to it? I don't know, but eventually you got the daisy chaining, right? And then
Correct.
that's kind of like one of the big selling points is the daisy chaining. In my mind, the test features is cool. It's cool.
The
But
test feature is awesome.
yeah, no, I mean I mean, honestly, the receiver. It sounded like when I was talking to David originally, the smart receiver, that was all that was going to be it. It was, and I was like, heck yeah, that's going to be freaking awesome because that's some of the biggest problems with the receiver. You don't even know it's just the data line or the Ethernet cable that's the problem until you're troubleshooting. This way, you press the button, you get no effect, and hey, that the cable is the problem there.
Well, it's not only that. So the
Mhm.
smart receivers, you actually don't even have to have them connected to a network cable. You honestly, just like test mode in a controller, you can set it out there, hit the test mode, and it'll run test mode without any network connections.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot better than I thought.
It's cool. It's fun. I in the garage, I actually had one of my smart receivers that I would use. I didn't want to hook up a controller. I didn't want to take the time to do any of that. I just took the smart receiver, hooked up the prop, hit test mode, let it run overnight. Okay, it's good. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. The I gotta say, I mean, like the footprint on them are exactly the same, right? So it's you can use the same standoffs that you had before. What kind of other than it's got 2 ports on it, so you can now do daisy chaining. It's got a test mode. Um,
So let's talk about the 2 ports.
yeah, let's talk about
So
that.
I've seen a lot of questions about the 2 ports. They're actually bridged. So there's no in and there's no out. So when you're going to hook it up, pick one. You can plug it in either one. It doesn't matter because they're bridged and the data is going to flow through either way. What's the difference is how the smart receivers receive the data, and that's actually how you can, when you configure it, you have the A, you have the B, and then potentially a C if you're chaining it all the way across. This is great for people that do not like power injection. To our previous conversation, if you don't like power injection and you don't want to do it, but you want to be able to maximize your ports, you can daisy chain the smart receivers and maximize your ports without having to do power injection. So port one, if you want to use 680 pixels but span it across 12 ports, hypothetically speaking, you can do so with the smart receivers where you set, and let me share my screen. I'll pull up I don't use all three, but I do use two, and I'll give you an example.
My plan is just to use two too.
And that's what I'm doing. So let me share. So this is actually not an F48. This is an F16V3. My F48, I'm not using any smart receivers,
Mm-hmm.
but the concept's the same. It works identical. And what you can see here for port 13, A and B, is essentially on port 13A, if I wanted to add uh, 100 pixels here,
Mhm.
hypothetically speaking, the first 376 pixels would be on receiver A. The next 100 pixels would be on receiver B. So, but it's still port 13. So you can take port 13 and have X amount of pixels on the first receiver and X amount of pixels on the second receiver. And if I really wanted, X amount of pixels on the next one. So you can daisy chain them together to maximize that port, but you still have in this particular configuration 12 outputs off of one port. I mean, 3 outputs off of one port, and you're just combining the pixel count between the 3 of them.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You're not able to get like 640, 640, 640 off of 13A, 13B, 13C. You're allowed to spread that 1640. I'm just using 6040 example. Some people push the limits to 1020, but let's say 640. So you can spread that 640 across all of them, right?
Correct.
And then you're in the safe zone. You can still do 40 frames per second. And
680 actually, it's not 640. 680 is your safe zone. Anything under 680 is your safe zone.
680. So with that 680, then you're safe. You can have 40 frames per second. You can spread that all out, and you don't have to power inject because at 100 pixels using John's amazing calculator, you can know confidently that you're not going to need to power inject that. So yeah, that's this amazing tool to have now. And for the listeners as well as the viewers, that's what those little pluses are right by the ports now in groups of 4s, basically in the Falcon port configuration panel. There's a little blue plus or a blue minus. When you click that, that brings you to now the different smart receivers. It breaks it down into 13A, then 13B, so on and so forth.
And I think actually that's a good segue for those of you that use X-Lights. X-Lights can do this configuration for you. If you're not comfortable configuring your own controllers, that's perfectly fine. X-Lights has made your life really, really easy with the new controllers. The most important thing is your setup is be able to tell X-Lights the controller type. If you're using ZCPP, it can do it automatically. But if you don't, like I don't, I use the E131 setup. Tell X-Lights the controller type you have, and then in your layout, underneath the controller connections, they have this smart receiver option, the A and B, and then C. And that tells it which one to do. And X-Lights will automatically configure it for you. You just need to, just like any other setup, just tell it where to put the data, and it'll figure it out for you.
Yeah, like the X-Lights controller connection panel or whatever you want to call that area down there in X-Lights. It's gotten such a big upgrade this year. The whole brightness now is usable. Like we never were able to use that. The null pixels things. Oh, it's great. If your controller can take that information, then X-Lights will put it in there and plug all that stuff for you. So there's almost like John was saying, if you want to have any configuration at all or be involved into that configuration panel, you don't have to. You can do everything in X-Lights now.
Correct. And upload it. I mean, it just gives you options.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, I love the smart receiver. I mean, for what is this for? I mean, for people, like how I'm going to be using it if people are listening is kind of like is that, I have like 2 receiver boxes. Last year, I had 2 receiver boxes relatively close to each other. They're about a foot or 3 feet apart of each other. And honestly, they could have all been in one single box. But the reason I didn't do that was because I just didn't see the reason why I want to have 2 Ethernets coming into it. If I was going to do that, I might as well just get a F16 and then I have extra ports. So this is so great about the receiver, the smart receivers, is that I can have one Ethernet coming into that box, but I can have 2 smart receivers inside of it, So this is a little less wires. I'm a little fanatic about wires. So that's kind of a cool thing that I like about it.
Yeah, especially for those that don't like power injection. And I've seen a lot of builds this year where people have done that. So that gives you 8 ports in a single box with one network cable. The smart receivers allow for you to maximize your controller and be able to spread out your display, but still use a single port. and daisy chain across it. And that's really the important thing.
Yeah, and another thing is like it's giving you so much more function and not for that much more price. You know, you're not going to be able to get the regulars anymore, but you can use the smart receivers just like you could the regular ones. And I mean, for $20, I mean, and now with the test mode that I can't believe I didn't even really think all the way through on is freaking awesome.
Yeah, that the test mode for me is the most awesome thing in the world. Is I can just pull a box off my shelf, set it on on my workbench, hook up lights, hit the test mode, and it runs test mode without me having to hook up a controller. That is just so effing awesome.
Yeah, no, a little hesitant on it at first, but I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a staple in our lighting hobby for sure. It's going to stick around. And even now, Dan Culp has that support on all the Falcon capes now too. So if you have a Dan Culp board, you can use the smart receivers now too. I mean, it's it's almost an open standard in a way, as far as the software side goes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's great. Not much of more of a price. It's going to be around for a while, so I'm excited about it. So, anything else, John, you like to talk about? I mean, we hit so many topics. I hope everyone really enjoyed the episode. If you're listening this long, wow.
Well, there's no secret. I can talk and talk and talk. So,
well, me too. I think the listeners know that. But I think I've taken enough of your time, and so I do want to give a huge plug to your website again. It's John Spiker, spikerlights.com, and he's got the calculator there. He has a very well informative power injection FAQ, I want to call it, because it really has like all the frequently kind of asked questions here and kind of what the synopsis of how to power inject. I really love it.
Yeah, I try to make that as easy for people to understand as possible. And, there's no advertising on it. I don't make any money from it. I never want to, never intend to. I just hope it helps the community. That's why I put it together. That's why I built it. I'll also give a plug to lightshowhub.com, which is David Peace's website. It's an amazing tool.
I will be honest. I did not know that was David's website until I actually talked about it with him in person. I thought it was your website.
No, it's not mine. It's actually. I'm not going to go into the story, but yeah, it's David Peace's website. He's doing a lot of things for the community and helping also. These are tools that I think everybody should utilize. The Megatree calculator has been a godsend for me when I was trying to design mine. He's got some new tools that are out there. So I want to plug David Peace's website also, because I think it's a great tool for everyone to utilize.
Yeah. Lightshowhub.com. Yeah, he's got a brand new tool. I think I'm going to have David on in a couple months and we'll talk about that tool. So, but John, thank you so much for coming on. You're a huge resource in the community. I want to say that, if you have any questions out there, put it on the forum, and trust me, if John knows it, he's going to answer it. And that's the kind of person he is. And thanks for coming on, John.
No problem. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it was informative for other people.
Yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Great.
Bye, guys.